Somewhere in your life right now while you are watching this video, a door is closing. Not tomorrow, not next week, tonight. And the terrifying part is not that the door is closing. The terrifying part is that most people will not even notice it happened until years later when they look back and whisper, "That was my moment and I let it pass." You are not going to be one of those people. Something made you click on this video. Something made you stop scrolling. That was not an accident. That was not an algorithm. That was a nudge, and by the end of this video, you are going to know exactly which door I am talking about, why it is closing tonight, and what happens to the people who refuse to walk through it in time. So do not look away. Do not touch that phone. Do not let this be another video you half watch while thinking about something else. Because what is said here tonight was not written for a distracted mind. It was written for the version of you that is finally ready to listen all the way to the end. What you're about to hear could change the next 10 years of your life. And I promise you, the last few minutes of this video will hit you harder than the first few. Stay with me all the way until the end, because what I am going to tell you in the final minutes is the part most people watching this exact video never get to hear. There is a moment that happens in every chosen life. It does not announce itself with trumpets. It does not arrive wrapped in comfort. It arrives disguised as fear, as inconvenience, as a decision you did not ask to make. Moses did not wake up planning to see a burning bush. He was doing the most ordinary thing a man can do, tending sheep on the backside of a desert, when suddenly the ground beneath him became holy and a voice he could not explain told him to take off his sandals because the very dirt he stood on was no longer ordinary ground. That is how it always begins. Not with preparation, but with interruption. God rarely calls the ready. He calls the available. And then he makes them ready on the way. And here is what almost nobody tells you about that moment, Moses argued. He did not fall to his knees in grateful obedience. He listed his excuses one after another. Who am I to do this? What if they do not believe me? I am not eloquent. I am slow of speech and slow of tongue. Send someone else. Sound familiar? That voice in your head right now, telling you that you are not ready, not qualified, not the kind of person doors open for. That voice is older than you are. It has said the same lines to every person who has ever handed something bigger than their comfort zone. The door does not wait for your confidence to catch up. The door closes on its own schedule, and it does not care how prepared you feel. I want you to think about the door in your own life right now. Maybe you already know what it is. Maybe you have been avoiding this video's title because some part of you already suspects. It might be a relationship you keep making excuses to stay in, even though your spirit has been quietly screaming for months that this is not where you are supposed to build your future. It might be a job that pays the bills, but is slowly draining the calling out of you, one comfortable paycheck at a time. It might be a dream you buried so deep under responsibility and fear that you have almost convinced yourself it was never real to begin with. Whatever it is, I want you to notice something. You already know. You knew before you click play. The door does not need to be explained to you. It only needs you to stop pretending you do not see it. Now here is the part most people teaching on this subject will not tell you, because it is uncomfortable. An uncomfortable truth does not get shared as easily as comfortable encouragement. Doors do not stay open forever. This is not a scare tactic. This is simply how it works. Grace gives you a window, not an eternity. Esther was told plainly by her uncle Mordecai that if she remained silent at this time, relief would rise from another place, but she and her father's house would perish. And then he said the words that should be tattooed on the inside of your mind. Who knows whether you have come to the kingdom for such a time as this? Not any time. Such a time as this. Your door has a timestamp on it too, and you do not get to see the countdown. You only get to feel it in that restlessness that will not let you sleep, in that ache that tells you time is moving and you are standing still. Let me tell you why doors close. It is not punishment. It is not God being cruel or impatient. A door closes because the next thing cannot begin while you are still standing in the doorway of the last thing. Think about your own life for a second. Have you ever tried to walk through an actual doorway while looking backward over your shoulder? You stumble. You hesitate. You bump into the frame. The door was never your enemy. Your hesitation was. And the tragedy is not that God stops offering. The tragedy is that we get so comfortable standing in doorways, one foot in the old life and one foot barely lifted toward the new one, that we mistake that in-between paralysis for peace, when really it is just fear wearing a very convincing disguise. Before we go further, I want to remind you why I am telling you all of this tonight, and not some other night, because doors like this one do not repeat themselves the way we wish they would. You can knock on a closed door for years and convince yourself that persistence alone will reopen it. But some doors are only open once, for a season, for a reason, and the wisest people in Scripture were the ones who recognized the window while it was still open, instead of mourning it after it shut. Peter understood this better than almost anyone in Scripture. Picture the scene. The storm is roaring, the boat is rocking, the disciples are terrified, and there, walking on top of the impossible waves, is a figure they cannot make sense of. Peter, impulsive, desperate, and somehow more faith-filled than fear-filled in that single instant, calls out, "Lord, if it is you, command me to come to you on the water." And Jesus says one word back, "Come." Not a paragraph of instructions, not a safety briefing, just come. Peter had to climb over the edge of everything he knew was solid, everything that had kept him alive on that sea, his entire life, and put his foot down on something that should not have been able to hold him. For a few unbelievable steps, it held him. He walked on water because he stopped negotiating with the door and simply stepped through it. But you know the rest of that story too. And this is where I need you to lean in, because this next part is for the version of you that has walked through a door before, felt the wind of the impossible under your feet, and then let the noise of the storm pull your attention away from the voice that called you out there in the first place. Peter took his eyes off Jesus and put them on the wind. The moment his focus shifted from the one who called him to the size of the storm around him, he began to sink. This is not a story about a man who failed. This is a story about what happens to every single one of us. The second we start measuring the size of our door by the size of our fear, instead of the size of the one who opened it. I'm going to pause here for a second, because if you are still watching this, something in you is not looking for entertainment right now. Something in you is looking for permission. Permission to stop pretending the door is not there. Permission to admit you have been standing in that doorway for longer than you want to say out loud. So let me give you that permission plainly. You are allowed to want more than the life you've been settling for. You are allowed to walk away from what is comfortable in order to walk toward what is calling. And you are allowed to be afraid while you do it. Fear was never the disqualifier. Staying was. There is another story, quieter than Moses, less dramatic than Peter on the water, but in some ways more haunting than both of them, and it is the story of Lot's wife. When the destruction came and the angels physically pulled the family out of the city by the hand, urging them not to look behind them, not to stop anywhere in the surrounding land, but to escape to the mountains, she looked back. We are never told exactly why. Maybe it was grief for the home she built. Maybe it was longing for the life she knew, even a broken one, simply because it was familiar. Maybe it was disbelief that everything really was ending. But the moment she turned around, she became a pillar of salt, frozen forever at the exact threshold between what she was leaving and what she was refusing to walk into. I tell you that story not to frighten you, though maybe it should frighten you a little, but to ask you a question you need to answer honestly tonight. What are you still looking back at? What familiar wreckage are you so attached to that you would rather freeze in the doorway than take one more step toward the mountain? Maybe it is a version of yourself from years ago that people still expect you to be. Maybe it is an old identity, an old sin, an old relationship, an old excuse that has kept you safe from the risk of trying and failing at something that actually matters. The door in front of you is not asking you to erase your past. It is asking you to stop living inside it. Now let me tell you about Gideon, because Gideon's story matters more to you tonight than you might realize. When the angel of the Lord appeared to him, Gideon was hiding in a winepress, threshing wheat in secret, terrified of the enemies surrounding his land. And the angel did not greet him as the frightened man he currently was. The angel greeted him as the man he was about to become. "Mighty man of valor," the angel said, to a man cowering in a hole in the ground. Gideon argued too, just like Moses did. He listed his family's weakness, his own insignificance, every reason the calling could not possibly be for him. And God's answer was not a rebuttal to his excuses. God's answer was simply, I will be with you. Not, you are strong enough. Not, you have nothing to fear. Just, I will be with you. That is the same answer waiting for you on the other side of your door tonight, not the removal of your weakness, the presence that makes your weakness irrelevant. I want to tell you about one more man, because his story might be the closest mirror to what some of you are living through right now. Joseph was handed a dream when he was still a teenager, a vision of a future so large his own brothers could not stand to look at him afterward. And instead of that dream opening a door for him, it seemed to slam every door shut instead. He was thrown into a pit by his own family. He was sold into slavery. He was falsely accused and thrown into a prison he did not deserve. For years, the door of that dream looked completely closed, buried under betrayal, injustice, and silence from heaven itself. But here is what nobody tells you about seasons like that. The pit was not the opposite of the dream. The pit was the hallway leading to it. Every unjust closed door Joseph walked through was quietly positioning him for the one door that mattered most, the door of Pharaoh's palace, where he would stand not as a slave or a prisoner, but as the very man positioned to save the nation that once imprisoned him. If you're in a season right now where it feels like every door is slamming shut around you, where nothing is opening, where the silence feels like abandonment instead of guidance, I need you to hear this. Closed doors are not always punishment. Sometimes they are protection. Sometimes they are positioning. Sometimes the door you are grieving right now was never meant to be your door at all, and the real one, the one built specifically for the calling on your life, is still ahead of you, closer than you think, waiting for the exact right moment to swing open. Joseph did not orchestrate his own rise to power. He simply refused to grow bitter in the pit, refused to abandon his integrity in the prison, and stayed ready so that when the real door finally opened, he was prepared to walk through it without hesitation. This is why tonight matters so much. Because readiness without response is wasted readiness. Joseph could have stayed ready for the rest of his life and never seen the palace if, when Pharaoh finally called for him, he had said, "Not tonight. I am too tired. I have been disappointed too many times before. Ask me again later." But he did not say that. When the door opened, he walked through it immediately, still wearing the residue of the pit and the prison, because he understood something you need to understand tonight. The door does not wait for you to feel fully healed from what the closed doors cost you. It only waits for you to decide you are done standing outside of it. Here is something I need you to really sit with, because it is the hinge this entire video turns on. The prodigal son, in that famous story Jesus told, did not get his breakthrough by staying in the pig pen and hoping conditions would improve. Scripture says he came to himself, and in that moment of clarity, he made a decision. I will arise and go to my father. Notice it required movement, not a feeling, not a wish. A decision followed by footsteps while he was still a great way off, walking the long road home in his shame, still rehearsing the apology speech he thought he would need. But his father saw him from a distance, and Scripture tells us he ran to meet him. Not walked, ran. The door was never the obstacle. The door had been open the entire time the son was starving in that far country. The only thing standing between him and everything he was made for was the decision to get up and walk. If you are watching this and some part of your chest just tightened, that is not a coincidence, and I am not going to pretend it is. That tightness is recognition. It is the sound of your own spirit agreeing with something your mind has been trying to talk you out of for months, maybe years. So let us talk plainly about what is actually keeping you standing in the doorway, because it is rarely the thing we say out loud. Sometimes it is comfort. The old life is not good, but it is known, and known pain feels safer than unknown possibility. Sometimes it is other people's expectations, the fear of disappointing a parent, a spouse, a community that has only ever known you inside the walls of the room you are trying to leave. Sometimes it is simple exhaustion, the sense that you have tried doors before, hoped before, believed before, and each time the door seemed to slam shut on your fingers. So now some guarded part of you refuses to reach for another handle. And sometimes, if we are honest, it is the fear that if we actually walk through, and it actually works, we will have no more excuses left for the life we have not yet built. It is easier to blame a closed door than to face an open one and discover we were afraid of who we would have to become on the other side. I want to tell you something that took me a long time to understand, and I say this gently, because I know some of you have been carrying this exact tension for a long time. God does not usually remove your fear before you walk through the door. He walks with you through it while the fear is still present. Faith was never the absence of fear. Faith is putting your foot down on the water while your knees are still shaking. If you wait to feel fearless before you move, you will wait for the rest of your life, because certainty is not what is being offered to you tonight. Obedience is what is being offered. And obedience, taken one trembling step at a time, has a strange way of turning into courage only after you have already started walking. There is one more story I need to bring into this, one that speaks directly to the word tonight in this video's title. And it comes from a parable about 10 young women waiting for a wedding to begin. 5 of them brought enough oil for their lamps to last through the delay. 5 of them did not, assuming there would always be time to prepare later. And when the call finally came at midnight that the bridegroom was arriving, the 5 without oil ran to buy more, and while they were gone, the door was shut. When they returned and knocked, pleading to be let in, the answer they received was that they were no longer recognized. That story is not told to frighten you for no reason. It is told because it describes exactly what happens when we assume the door we are avoiding will simply wait for our convenience. Some doors do not wait. Some doors close at midnight. While we are still out running errands we thought were more urgent than the calling in front of us. There is one more picture I want to leave in your mind before we get to the part of this video that matters most. When the armies of Israel stood frozen across the valley from a giant named Goliath, every trained soldier in that army had a door in front of them too. The door of stepping forward, the door of ending a standoff that had already lasted 40 days. And every single one of them, men who had trained their whole lives for exactly this moment, stood still, because the size of the giant convinced them the door was not meant for them. Then a shepherd boy, who was not even supposed to be on the battlefield, who had only come to deliver bread to his brothers, looked at the same giant everyone else had been staring at for over a month and asked a simple, dangerous question. Is there not a cause? While trained men calculated the risk, an untrained boy recognized the door. He did not wait for permission that made sense to anyone else. He picked up 5 smooth stones and walked toward the very thing everyone else was too afraid to walk toward, and history remembers his name for it. Nobody remembers the names of the soldiers who stood frozen in the valley that day. History only remembers the ones who walked through the door while everyone else was still deciding whether it was safe to move. Now stay with me, because I told you the second half of this video would hit differently than the first half, and we're approaching that part now. I want you to think about what is actually on the other side of your door. Not the fear of it, not the unknown fog you have been imagining, the actual tangible thing you have sensed calling you for longer than you have admitted. Maybe it is a calling to build something you have kept shrinking down to a hobby because a dream that size scared you. Maybe it is the courage to finally end something that has been quietly ending you. Maybe it is forgiveness you have refused to extend, keeping both you and the other person locked outside a door that has been waiting to open for years. Maybe it is simply the decision to take your faith seriously for the first time in your adult life, instead of keeping it folded neatly in a drawer you only open on Sundays. Whatever it is, here is the truth that ties every single one of these stories together. Moses, Esther, Peter, Gideon, the prodigal son, the wise and foolish virgins, and yes, even the sobering warning of Lot's wife. Every one of them was chosen before they felt ready. Every one of them faced the door that required movement, not certainty. Every one of them had a moment where staying felt safer than going, and every one of them discovered, on the other side of their obedience, that the thing they were afraid would break them was actually the thing that finally set them free. I want to ask you something, and I want you to actually answer it in your own mind right now, not later, not after this video ends and life pulls your attention back into its noise. What door has been quietly closing in your life while you have been busy telling yourself you will deal with it eventually? Eventually is the graveyard where most callings go to die. Eventually is not a plan. Eventually is a polite way of saying not yet, and not yet has a way of becoming never if you say it enough times. Here is what I believe with everything in me, and it is the reason this video exists at all. You were not created to spend your entire life standing in doorways. You were created to walk through them, to build on the other side of them, to look back one day not with the frozen regret of Lot's wife, but with the grateful clarity of a person who can say, I was afraid, and I walked anyway, and it was worth it. That is the difference between a life that shrinks and a life that expands. Not the absence of fear, the decision to move despite it. I know some of you watching this have been hurt by doors that closed before. Maybe you walked through one once, in faith, in hope, and it did not turn out the way you expected. And now some quiet part of you has decided it is safer never to trust an open door again. I want to speak gently to that part of you right now. One closed door in your past does not prove that every future door is a trap. It only proves that you are human and that you have already survived disappointment once, which means you are stronger than you give yourself credit for. The door in front of you tonight is not the same door that hurt you before. Do not let an old wound write the ending of a new chapter. So tonight, while this door is still open, while the invitation is still standing, I am asking you to do something uncomfortable. Stop negotiating with your fear. Stop waiting for the feeling of readiness that may never come on its own. Whatever that next step is, whatever conversation you have been avoiding, whatever application you have been too afraid to submit, whatever relationship you know in your gut you need to release, whatever dream you buried under years of practical excuses, take one step toward it tonight. Not tomorrow. Tonight, because the door that is open right now was never guaranteed to still be open in the morning. If you have made it this far in this video, I do not believe that is a coincidence either. I believe you were meant to hear this tonight, at exactly this moment, in exactly this season of your life, for exactly this reason. You are the chosen one this message was written for. Not because you are more qualified than anyone else. Moses was not eloquent. Peter was impulsive and unreliable. Gideon hid in fear before he ever became a mighty man of valor. The prodigal son had already failed spectacularly once before he ever turned around. None of them were chosen because they had it together. They were chosen because they were willing, eventually, to move. So here is your moment. Right now, wherever you are, whatever device you are holding, I want you to make a decision, quietly, internally, but firmly. Decide that tonight is the night you stop standing in the doorway. Decide that whatever that door represents in your life, you are done pretending you do not see it. Decide that fear does not get to make your decisions for you anymore. You do not need to have the whole plan figured out. Peter did not know how many steps he would get before he needed rescuing. He only knew that staying in the boat guaranteed he would never find out what walking on water felt like. If this reached something in you tonight, if you felt that tightening in your chest that told you exactly which door I have been describing this whole time, I want you to do something simple before you close this video. Speak it, even quietly, even just in your own mind. Say, I am walking through it. Not because the fear is gone, because the fear no longer gets the final word. And if you want to carry this with you, if you want to keep being reminded that you were made for more than the doorway you've been standing in, stay close, because there is more of this waiting for you. More truth, more courage, more of exactly what you needed to hear tonight, right when you needed to hear it. I want to leave you with one final thought before this video ends, because I do not want you to walk away from this moved for 5 minutes and then unchanged by tomorrow morning. Every single person we have talked about tonight, Moses, Esther, Peter, Gideon, Joseph, the shepherd boy in the valley, the prodigal son walking the long road home, they all had one thing in common that had nothing to do with talent, timing, or luck. They were simply the ones who moved when it would have been easier to stay still. That is the whole secret. Not perfection, not fearlessness, not talent, not connections, not a guarantee of how the story would end. Just movement, at the exact moment it mattered most, toward the door that was calling them. The door is closing, but it is not closed yet, and you, chosen one, still have time, right now, tonight, to rise up and walk through.